morning. 10 o'clock on a Thursday means it's time for the KEDA webinar. Thank you all for joining us. We're happy to have you here again today to learn some more about doing business in the COVID environment. Today we have two great local experts, Monica Blackwood and Roslyn Weber, who will be giving us tips and tools on what you need to as you prepare in this phased opening to reopen your business. We thank both of them for sharing their wealth of knowledge. Just a couple of housekeeping things. We have, of course, our website that we encourage you to continue checking out. We have the special COVID page where you can find past webinars, all kinds of resources. Teresa did a great job, as always, updating just in time for today. And the new additions are, I think she's trying to, there we go. So there's a whole new section for reopening resources and guides. This back to work toolkit from the Madrona group has everything you need. I've been told that it's the best thing several folks have looked at. There's also links to the Washington State reopening guidance by industries, Restore Your Economy, from the International Economic Development Council has great information and other things. So check out that new section on our webpage. And just a couple of polls as we get started. We want to know who's here today. So how long have you been in business, those of you watching? I always find it interesting. So far, no one has checked 1 to 3 years. Okay, I'm going to end the polling. Share. Wow, lots of longtime business owners on today. Thank you. And then one final poll before we get started, as we get ready to hear from Monica. As we're preparing for phase 2 and beyond, which one or any of them, you can check more than one, describe your workforce. You're concerned about creating a safe environment. You're going to be talking about splitting schedules. You're concerned you can't bring them all back. You haven't made any changes, or other. And if you do check other, we ask that you put those answers in our chat so that we can learn from your great ideas. Okay, just a couple more seconds. And wow, no staff changes and concerned about a safe environment are tied. I'm sure Monica is not surprised by any of this, and she'll be talking more. So with that, I want to introduce Monica Blackwood, a longtime partner and friend of KEDA, past chair of our board. She owns West Sound Workforce, and now she's going to share all the things she's been learning about COVID and your workforce. Thank you, Monica.
Thanks, and thanks for joining everyone that's on here. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen and get my presentation up and going so that we can move forward. Hold on, let's see, and we'll get, maybe, there we go. Okay, so here we go. It's not your typical grand reopening. I know that that's, lots of people talk about reopening, but it's not the traditional type. And it seems like we shut down in seconds 2 months ago. And now businesses are trying to reopen amid this new COVID-19 environment. Employees and employers are anxious and eager, fearful, burned out, and more. And so what steps can we take to open back up in a safe way? First of all, recognize that this is a journey. We haven't been here before. We haven't been through this. This is a presentation of a collection of information that's gathered from reliable sources that I have, as well as some of my past experiences. But take with this all of the resources that you have available, whether it be your lawyers, your accountants, HR professionals like myself and Roslyn, and other businesses and more. And together we will make it through. So your roadmap. Part one is kind of the strategy. There are some things that really need to be happening before you actually open up your doors. You want to develop a task force. This is really, really important. You want to have a group of people that you are talking with and planning this out with, and it's going to be cross-functional members from with different backgrounds, whether it be leadership, legal, communications, others. Also think about if you have different locations for your business, make sure you have representation from that respect as well. You want to think about communications, the lines and the methods, internal communications, external spokespeople, what frequency do you talk with different audiences? What tools do you use, whether they be text, email, Slack, phone, in-person, mail, posters or infographics or anything else. And also think about the confidentiality aspect of it all as well. And surveys and reporting methods are also good things to use. You want to talk about the who and where. It's highly likely that not everybody is going to come back all at once to your location. So who comes first and where do they go? Think about the phase-in plan that you have. Who is essential at which phase of your reopening roadmap do you have them come? You want to maintain, obviously, the safe social distancing and what kind of protective equipment do you have for everybody. Make sure you're bringing people back by a legit category, department, seniority, roles, geography, whatever that is, because you don't want to show desperate treatment towards one population and against another. And make sure you document all of the reasonings why you chose to bring back each category at one time or at each phase. You want to talk about customer facing procedures. If you are a business that has a lot of public traffic coming in, you want to think about how you're going to serve those individuals. Are you going to have curbside service? Are you going to have employees take orders and go and fetch the items that people need and retrieve those things and bring them back? So work through those logistics as well. Safety measures, you know, there's so much out there already about those, whether or not gloves, masks are required, temperatures, screenings, all of that sort of stuff. We'll talk about that in a minute. About the people who come and bring products for you to be able to make your product or sell your product and whatnot. You don't want to have all the deliveries come at once. So figure out your staggering process for that. Regulations, of course, there's several that are older, like the ADA, FMLA, FLSA, so forth. But there's also FCRA and other newer guidelines that are set out by industries or state and local jurisdictions as well. So you want to be mindful of those. A really big key to this roadmap is playing kind of what I call the what if game. And this is to help develop your continuity plan. You know, think about what if kids aren't back in school in the traditional schedule this fall, and what are parents who are your employees going to do about childcare? You want to think about those kinds of things so you can plan your staffing schedules around them. What happens if a new round hits hard? What if a particular employee gets really sick, regardless if it's COVID or something else? What if your PPP plan isn't fully forgiven? And there's so many more what if questions that you can ask yourself to kind of prep for what might come. And then it's really important to have a resource list in this Part 1 strategy section. Those things could be resources like the CDC, World Health Organization, Washington DOSH and Department of Health, Access Washington, coronavirus.wa.gov, ADA website, and any other industry websites and so forth. So Part 2 is getting your physical space ready. And this, again, is before anybody steps into your workplace. You want to make sure you have your PPE materials and sources figured out, and hopefully on hand, what materials you need, how to order them, how to wear them, inventory list, reorder schedule, what they might be, gloves, sanitizers, masks, whatever. Make sure you have that all documented on pen to paper. An important thing to think about is your landlord-tenant relationship. If you're renting space, you want to make sure you're having conversation with your landlord, or if you're the landlord, have conversations with your tenants. This might apply to you, especially if there are multiple tenants in a building. You want to have protocols for notification, tracking, and tracing if that's needed. Responsibilities of the landlord or the tenant. For example, HVAC cleaning schedule. That's highly encouraged that schedule be more frequent than it has been in the past. Talk about touchless technology, whether it be soap dispensers, faucets, elevator technology, sanitizer dispensers, all of that. Who is going to take care of those and what is needed? Cleaning protocols, again, there's lots of information about that. You want to have a robust schedule. But you also want to think about things like the microwave handle in the kitchen, or the refrigerator handle and the coffee maker. How do those things get wiped down on a regular basis to help with the sanitation efforts? You've got social distancing measures to think about, including, maybe your conference rooms, and this is a room capacity thing. If your conference rooms normally had 20 chairs in them, pull half of those out so that there's more space. If you have common areas for people to gather, maybe you don't have quite as much furniture in those areas to limit kind of subconsciously how many people gather together at once. You need to have education materials. There are some mandatory posters that need to be put up, but what other posters and things can you put up to remind people about what your new protocols and policies might be? Speaking of protocols, you have to have a sick protocol. Every guideline that the governor has released so far for each industry that I have seen requires a sick protocol in that. So what happens if somebody starts exhibiting symptoms? Do you have a designated place to take them to isolate them away from others? And what are you doing about cleaning those areas where they were? Make sure you're staying on track of, on top of all of that. And again, you want to have a resource list for this category as well. And that could include things that were in the other category for strategy, but you also want to include vendors for your PPE equipment, industry-specific guidelines, and OSHA as well. So then we've got part 3, which is the people, and you certainly want to take care of the people, right, as you're returning back to work. So you want to reassure your employees and your customers that you're following the governor's regulations. This is around high-risk employees. On April 13th, the governor did issue a proclamation around how high-risk employees may or may not come back to work. And so you want to make sure you follow those. Follow industry-specific guidelines. Again, like I mentioned, there are guidelines that the governor has released, plus national industry organizations have released guidelines for specific areas of expertise, whether it be construction, manufacturing, retail, restaurant, professional services, and so forth. So make sure you're following those. For Washington's specific information, you can find that on the coronavirus.wa.gov website under the Safe Start section. So make sure you're regularly checking those because those get updated. You want to make sure you're giving tips on how to they manage COVID at home for your employees. You want them to know that they they should be putting together a plan if something happened, if somebody were exposed or were diagnosed with COVID, what's their plan at home to keep their space clean and keep that individual isolated and whatnot. So that's one way that things come back into the workplace. So you want to make sure that they're aware of things that they can do at home. Callback notices, this is really important. You want to make sure your callback notices when you bring people back, you want these to be in writing, and you want their response to be in writing. And this is particularly important if you have a PPP loan and you are looking for forgiveness, because if that offer is documented in writing and their response is in writing, and they choose not to come back, that can play into your forgiveness aspect and not be held against you. So that's important. And again, resource list here is really important. You're going to want to include things like your insurance contact information and your EAP, as well as the things that have been listed before in other resource sections. Also might include some local nonprofits that have services like the 211 or Kids Have Community Resources or Kids Have Mental Health and so forth. So those are all good to include in the resource section. You also want to make sure that you have trainings because, again, in all of those guidelines that have been issued out by the governor's office, there are required trainings to be had. And you can think about this from a company-wide perspective. You can think about it as kind of a re-onboarding process of sorts. You want to educate your employees on what the company is doing for safety protocols, things that have been enhanced and changed, expectations for them cleaning their workspace or conference rooms and commonly used areas, and response protocols. Isolation coordinator is also a training that you want to have because you need to have in those guidelines issued out by the state. They have a requirement to have a site supervisor specifically for COVID. So that's where this isolation training might come in play for you, so that you can make sure that somebody knows what to do if somebody comes down and is sick. Screening is also another requirement of the guidelines. So you want to have screening leads have training, whether that be by questionnaire or taking temperatures or a combination of all of those and some other things. You want to know that you've got a space that's isolated and maintains confidentiality, and what are you going to be doing with that information afterwards. So those things are really important to do. And the last part that I want to say really quickly are you cannot over communicate anything. So continue to communicate, keep doing it, meet as often as you need to, send out those emails, put up on social media the things that you need to do in order to push out your messages to your various audiences. You also want to continue to watch for best practices because we're still early in this reopening phase and there's a lot for us to still learn. So make sure that you're getting on webinars like this that continue throughout the time frame, because there will be new things that are added and best practices tweaked and so forth, which is really important. We do at our office, we do welcome back packages. This is where we send out a letter saying, hey, it's really exciting, you get to come back to work. These are our safety protocols that we have in place. And by the way, here's a packet of what our host site safety protocols are, so that those individuals, those employees can start learning the things that they are going to need to do. And we also include a hand sanitizer as well. And then mental health. You know, this has been a really big thing, big event and we've been stretched and pulled and isolated and have a lot of feelings towards that. Coming back together can be hard. As much as we're all excited about it, it can be hard as well. So remember to have grace with one another as we do this. And also when you're coming back together, as much as we don't want it to, this can become a political thing as well, as we enter into the political season. So as employers, you want to make sure that you have a proper handle on politics in the office without stepping on individual rights. So with that, I will, oh, here's the resource list that I used in order to put this all together. And KEDA has this, and we'll be sharing it so that you guys can access it as well. And then that's my contact information. So with that, I will.
Thank you, Monica. So there's a couple of questions so far. Let's see. KJ asked, where do you get the mandatory posters?
I can send you the link. It's on the Department of Labor's website, but and it was, it's the same one that was required as of the beginning part of April. I can't remember the exact date, but it's about the FCRA laws. And so I can make sure that KEDA has that and can post it up on their site.
Perfect. And if you don't mind, if you have it handy, you could also put it in chat. Okay. Let's see.
The other thing is, in a lot of the state guidelines that are issued out, the governor requires organizations to post up their sick plan and you know, their enhanced cleaning schedules and so forth. So those are also quasi-mandatory. I'd post them up.
Okay. Sandra asked, do you provide the packets for clients?
How do I provide them?
Do you provide the packets for clients?
Well, I hadn't thought about that, but I'm certainly open. Sure.
That's the cool thing about these webinars. Right. It's like people come up with things we haven't thought of.
Reach out to me. We'll chat.
Okay. Let's see. Joe Hulsey's asking, Jamie, this is probably a you question. If you received the PPP and do not use it and are not going to ask for forgiveness, are you precluded from receiving unemployment? Or this could be a Monica question too.
Well, what I would say is that we've been talking a lot about this with the Small Business Development Center advisors in Washington. And there's a lot of sort of things that are unclear, but the big thing is overall, you know, you want to make sure you're not double dipping. And the whole point of the PPP is paycheck protection. So, you know, if you took it I mean, why did you take it in the first place would be the thing. And there was a period of forgiveness where people who didn't quite think it through by, I think it was May 18th or something, you know, could give it back. But I would talk to your lender, because the whole point of that is that at least 75% of it has to go to payroll. And there are some situations, excuse me, where people may be trying to, you know, figure this out in terms of some unique situations, but in general, you want to think about the double dipping rule. So, you know, if you aren't using it, you still can only use it for, you know, certain things. You can still use it for your, you know, rent and utilities or whatever, but it won't be forgiven if you didn't then use, you know, the 75%, you know, for paychecks. So it's a little bit tricky. And what I would say is, if you want us to, if you need more information than that, you know, one of the things you can do is just reach out to the Kitsap SBDC and, you know, sign up, and we'll have one of us, you know, go over it with you in detail. Monica, do you have anything else towards that?
Pretty much summed up what I was going to say.
Okay, Monica, this is a question for you from Nikki. Are isolation coordinators and screening leads required for all businesses, or just those that are public, like grocery stores, versus offices like accounting?
So the COVID site supervisors, that's the term that's used in the guidelines that the governor publishes out for each industry. So far, I've seen it in every single guideline packet that's published, whether it be for professional services, which would be office, like accounting, or for grocery stores, or for manufacturing, or for retail, etc. So yeah, you would want to have that.
Okay.
Nikki needs me to send the guidelines for professional services, then I can send you the link.
Okay. Yeah, she said that would be great.
Sure.
All right. I think we're ready for our next poll. So where are you as far as getting ready to reopen? You're going to continue pivoting and make changes. You've kept in contact with your staff, and again, you can check as many as you need to. You've kept in contact with your clients and customers. You have a documented plan, you have concerns, and then the ever popular other. And we would ask that you put what you've done as far as other in the chat window so we can all learn from your experience. Couple more seconds for folks to answer. Wow, I like it. A huge majority have kept in contact with your clients and customers. Good for you. Not seeing anything in the other window yet, so I'm curious. And good job, folks. And with that, we are going to go on to another great partner and friend of KEDA, Roslyn Weber. She's also done great things for Kids Out Business Forum. I know she works with several local businesses. So thank you, Roslyn, for being here with us today.
Thank you. Let me get my screen sharing going. Okay. Good morning, everyone. As Kathy said, I'm Roslyn Weber with the Predictive Group, and I specialize in helping employers take a data-driven approach to building high-performing teams. So when Kathy asked me to contribute to today's webinar, of course, I immediately thought about the people aspects of bringing people back to work and reopening in this new environment. Is strategically approaching how you manage your people as you reopen is going to be one of the most critical aspects of succeeding in it. So I know from that poll we just did that you are all either pivoting or have pivoted your company's business priorities. And in that pivot, two of the most critical parts of your business, right, your strategy and your workforce have just undergone significant changes. In response to the health crisis and the economic crisis, you have no doubt taken actions to adapt and survive. And as a result of this, you need to realign your operating model. And that means your workforce has been or soon will be directed to work in different ways, potentially with new people, and potentially after a reduction in force. So no doubt your people are going to be forced to behave differently and do more with less. And the success of these priorities are going to depend on the performance of your people. So your next step is going to be to realign your business priorities with the retained workforce to position your company for recovery. Right? And here's the exciting part. Reopening is an opportunity to fix things that you maybe didn't get right the first time. So as I thought about what I should share with you today, to not only give you a roadmap for addressing your talent strategy, but to also help you potentially be even more successful than before the shutdown, I decided to focus on these 3 steps. And they loosely follow our framework for talent optimization. And here's why it's so important. Organizations that take a structured approach to optimizing talent are on average 16% more likely to achieve their business goals. Right, so the first step is to align your leadership or executive team with the new business strategy. Well, what does this mean? There's really 2 aspects of it. Right? The first is ensuring that everyone has the same understanding of what the new strategy or strategic priorities are, right? If everyone isn't rowing in the same direction, it's pretty hard to get where you want to go. This may seem obvious, but a lot of the business owners and CEOs that I work with are always surprised when we ask their employees what the strategic priorities are, and they get back a wide range of responses. So the first step is in aligning your people so that they can execute on your goals is making sure there is absolute clarity about what those priorities are. Right? Tell them multiple times in multiple ways. Some people are going to respond better to the verbal, some people are going to remember the written, right? And also make sure that you show that through your actions. If you are saying that safety is now our most important priority, make sure you're demonstrating that in the decisions that you make. Marcus Buckingham, who I think is one of the world's greatest management consultants and wrote an outstanding book called The One Thing You Need to Know, asserts that the single most important job for a leader is providing clarity. So the second aspect of executive team alignment is understanding how your own natural behaviors need to adjust to your new strategic priorities, because often the strengths that helped you succeed before may not be what the new strategy requires. In fact, in times of stress, those natural behaviors emerge so strongly that sometimes we find people overusing those strengths, and it actually becomes what used to create success for them actually becomes a detriment to them as their world has changed. So let me give you some examples. I know in a call a couple weeks ago, several business owners shared that their real change in business strategy is that they need to be a lot more innovative and flexible than they used to be. So for their businesses to survive, they need to come up with new services, new ways to work, or new ways to deliver their offerings to their customers. Being agile and experimental like this requires a willingness to make mistakes, take chances, work in areas that maybe you don't have much expertise or experience. If you previously succeeded by ensuring that you had rock solid procedures that ensured you could efficiently deliver 100% accurate work, this is a big switch. The executive in this position is going to need to flex those natural tendencies and recognize the need to perhaps move forward with less than full information or before all details are resolved. I suspect that as restaurants and retail stores begin reopening and need to comply with new health and safety regulations, the alignment gap will actually go the other way. Leaders who typically focus on the big picture and are more concerned with where they're going than how they'll get there are going to find that safety is their new number one concern, right? And they may need to pay attention to details that may feel like painful minutiae at times. Recognizing these shifts up front so you can consciously adjust your behaviors to execute on these changes, right, are going to be key to doing it successfully. And if you're an organization that's large enough to have a team of leaders or an executive team, one very effective way of handling this is to look at who on the team does have natural strengths in those areas and have them be the champions of those priorities that are in natural alignment with who they are and where their innate strengths lie. So that's business strategy. The second step then is to think about your staffing strategy or your people. And that I'm calling individual alignment with your new strategic priorities. And the first category in there is job changes. If your operating model and business priorities have changed, right, the behaviors that lead to success in that role have probably changed as well. So you need to think about, do you want to bring people back to the same roles? Is that really still the best match for them? Or is this a chance to redesign jobs and maybe put people in roles that are a better match for who they are, where their strengths lie? This takes some work. You need to know your people well to understand this, but imagine how much easier your life will be if you put the right person in the right role the first time. And if you're not bringing everyone back, who are the right people for this brave new world? And I'll share an example with you of a car dealership we work with in another state, that when they shut down in mid-March, said, okay, we need to figure out what it takes to successfully sell cars online and what a great online car salesperson would be like. And what they came up with is a little bit different than what great looks like in person on the lot. They chose 6 people to train. And before the shutdown, they had 43 salespeople. As a Toyota dealership, 43 salespeople selling an average of about 400 cars a month. In the month of April, these 6 people that were really well aligned with what it took and received specialized training sold 225 cars in the month of April. So that's what I talk about when I talk about job changes and really thinking about what needs to be different and who is the best match for the changes in what this job now requires. So the second category in your staffing strategy is to think about any new jobs. And when Monica's presentation, she listed several new roles. They may not be jobs, maybe they're a role that somebody else takes on. And again, looking at who's going to be the right person, who's well suited to do what this new role requires. I was just reading that apparently one of the biggest reopening challenges for restaurants and even drive-in movie theaters that seem like it should be easy is how to ensure social distancing and sanitation requirements for restroom facilities. One restaurant created a new job called the restroom monitor, whose job is both to make sure that when there's a queue for the restroom, that people maintain their mandatory spacing, and that it also the restroom gets sanitized in between each user. Right? Grocery stores have already done this a bit in their new, their sanitation teams that are cleaning the carts in between each shopper. Right? So think about what kind of person do you need in these new roles and define the behaviors that are going to lead to success in them. And then finally, as you bring employees back to work, helping them get engaged and become productive again may look different than it did before. Right? As Monica talked about, the mindset and morale of the workforce has been shaken. And even if leaders are at their best and people's talents are well aligned with their jobs, right, fear and uncertainty can paralyze a workforce. We've been using the phrase unfreezing your workforce quite a bit as people struggle to move forward emotionally and in some cases attempt to do more with less. So the challenge here is, how do you rekindle your workforce so you can get the company moving again? We often talk about in employee engagement, there's a have to curve and a want to curve. Right? So people on the have to curve are doing just what the job requires to keep their job. Right? They're doing what their stated job responsibilities are and not much more. People on the want to curve are your highest performing employees that are going above and beyond. They're coming up with more creative solutions. They're providing better customer service. They're maybe using your company resources more wisely or coming up with new ideas for ways to do things more efficiently. As you bring people back, then I have 3 suggestions for how to get them from that want to curve up to from the have to curve up to the want to curve. And I think this is particularly poignant right now because I've heard from several employers that some of the employees they're bringing back are saying, wow, I was making more money on unemployment than I am when I work because of the extra $600 a week that's been added right now. And so those employees, are more likely to come back just on that have-to curve because they can't turn down the offer of employment and keep their unemployment benefits. So for these employers, the challenge is, wow, how do I move these people up to the want-to curve? So 3 areas I'm seeing a need to focus on as you reopen. The first is thinking about each individual and what their unique needs and drives are so that you can tailor your approach to them. While some may crave stability and struggle with the change and the uncertainty that we have right now, others may be eager to jump into things and want to have a lot thrown at them and to get busy juggling new jobs, new roles, and new situation. Humans tend to assume that other people want what we want and are going to be motivated by the same things we are. And so my point here is just to really think about each person on your team or each person working for you. What do they need? And to tailor your approach with them accordingly. Right. The second area is team dynamics. If the team has changed or hasn't been working together for the last 2 months, right, they're not going to jump right back into a trusting, collaborative working relationship. We're even finding that with teams that are working remotely together now and having Zoom meetings. They've lost a lot of cohesion and communication has suffered because of the physical distancing. Calls and video meetings help, and I saw a lot of you have kept in touch with your employees, and that's outstanding. But the casual conversations that help build that psychological safety, that's the foundation of teamwork, hasn't been happening in most situations. So, and my personal advice on the team dynamics is that fun activities are nice, but they're a pretty slow way to build team effectiveness. Things like sharing your strengths, successes, challenges, weaknesses, goals, things that relate more specifically to what you're trying to accomplish as a team are a much more effective way of building that teamwork and psychological safety. Right? Pizza parties and bowling nights are fun once we can do them again, but the impact on team dynamics is not huge. And if you're the leader, start with yourself. What are you good at? What are your weaknesses? Ask your team for their help and advice. Let yourself become vulnerable first, and that helps everyone else start opening up. And then the final area on engagement that I want to point out is just this whole topic of career development. Nearly every business has had to focus on surviving and adjusting over the last 2 months. So conversations about development in the future have been put on back burner out of necessity. That's okay for a while, but one of the strongest drivers of employee engagement is seeing growth opportunities. Right? And it may even have to be a short conversation at this point, but recognizing that the company wants you to be part of their long-term success and is going to invest in your development is a pretty powerful driver. You can have at least a short conversation now, but don't put off the real investment in them for too long. Okay. So thank you. I hope I gave you some good issues to ponder as you think about your employees and opening in this brave new world. And as you think about how to apply these ideas to your business, I'm happy to talk one-on-one with anybody. There's absolutely no charge. I love doing this. I love solving business problems. So if I can just help you talk through something, please feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Thank you, Roslyn. Do folks have any questions for Roslyn? I feel very blessed that both Monica and Roslyn were available today. Great information. I think people might be a little scared about all the work ahead of them to make this work well, but I'm confident that we are going to be able to do it. We do have a comment. career development is going to be a key conversation, especially for organizations that had to lay off team members due to COVID. There's going to be a big psychological factor in development and feeling wanted and needed at the respective companies. And both of you touched on that. Do you have any things to add to that, or what people could maybe be looking at?
Yeah, I think people need to know in this new environment that their employer is working in, what are the opportunities? How am I going to be coached and developed to get there? And really all the positive feedback that you need to be providing employees on what they're doing, what they're accomplishing, what they're contributing.
Monica, do you have anything else?
No, not. Roslyn summed it up really well. So there's just going to be a lot of development. But honestly, I think that was happening already. The importance of that was coming to the surface quite a bit more even before COVID hit, and it just continues to show that is an area that employers need to be aware of and be cognizant of, and so do employees. So.
Okay, good. Well, and I think it's important for people to know that we do have resources locally to help them, because I know both of you are always open to questions and assistance. So while we have a little lull here and see if there are more questions, we're going to do our final poll, which is always the fun poll of the day. So I want to know what people have been doing, since we've had all this extra time. Did you binge watch Tiger King? Did you listen to a podcast of, every episode of one of your favorite podcasts? Did you watch every season of Survivor? Did you watch the sci-fi subscription only? Did you binge watch old sports games? Did you alphabetize your spices and pantry? Or what else did you do? And of course, we need to know what you did if you hit the other category. Somebody said, what extra time? Okay, well, yes, that's from a startup, so we understand that. Book reading.
Actually, let me chime in on that comment, because I read a statistic from an organization that tracks the traffic on virtual private networks, so can tell how much people are working. And they've found that with remote workers, they've actually been working 3 more hours a day on average remotely than they were when they were in the office. And so the theory is, instead of their commute time now, they're using that time to work.
Yeah. I might resemble that remark as well.
I see Monica nodding too. Like,
yeah.
It's not pretty when the
that's
office
part
is
of my
just
burnout
upstairs.
Conversation that I have.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Ozark, Breaking Bad, painting the house a couple of times, home projects. Oh, I love it. Getting control of the paper tsunami in their house. Lose weight by not going out to lunch every day. Somebody watched the big flower fight on Netflix, so there's something to put on your to-do list. Oh, this is fun. Gardening, it's all good. I like it. I like how creative people are being. Sorry, I should have ended the poll. So mostly it was other things. I have not watched Tiger King. I will not be watching Tiger King. And there were some people who alphabetized their spices. We've got some ACD folks here.
3.
I love it. Let's see. Do we have any other, cleaning up?
I saw a comment about mental health and whether it's going to be recognized as a bigger part of effective management. This is something that I've been kind of passionate about, and I don't have a specific reason why, but I do think that this is an area that employers are going to be a little more aware of, focused on HR will be playing a role in that a little bit more. I know, for instance, actually my husband yesterday, today, and tomorrow, he is taking an instructor course for the mental health first aid program. And if employers haven't had that program brought into their organization, it is incredible. It's a one-day session, just like CPR first aid, but it is an amazing thing to have your employees go through, and you never know where it's going to come in handy for them. But I've used those tactics with my employees here internally at Westtown Workforce, and so I'd highly encourage it. If anybody needs any more information about it, just reach out. I'm happy to share. But he's becoming certified in it, so.
Oh, that's great. So another good local resource.
Right.
Yeah, mental health first aid. I think it's probably long overdue. And
absolutely.
And now we have tools that are going to help us. Just pointing out, Teresa's put on the screen for us, reminder, we are taking a break next week, and then we'll be back at it in June with some more tools and strategies for you. And unless there are more questions, I'm just going to let Roslyn, Kathy, not kidding, Monica, and Jamie, if she has anything, with final thoughts.
Go ahead, Roslyn.
Okay. Yeah, I guess my final thought is that kind of the message said at the beginning, if you can view this as an opportunity, what can I do even better as I move forward and I reopen? Essentially, this is like your grand reopening. So find some optimism in the opportunity that it presents.
Great.
I totally agree, and along with it, again, like I said before, just remember that as we come out of this together, we need to have some grace and some flexibility, and with each other and with ourselves, most importantly, and just be kind and stay well and stay healthy.
Yes.
And I would say, not to get bogged down now and to be thinking about where you want to be 6 months from now. And Seth Godin, who a lot of you know who that is, he's been doing some webinars and has some things to say about being resilient and not assuming things are the same as they were, and how you can, be cognizant of what you might need to change in order for you to thrive and survive in the long term.
Great. I love all these words we're hearing about grace and, being, forward thinking and, taking care of our employees. So thank you all. Tons of great responses today. So thank you again for sharing. And